to make sure. How you doing tonight, all right?
Good evening, Joe. Good to be with you.
Okay, we got a really great discussion here coming up. I know you primed me a little bit with the whole idea. I believe we're going to talk about everything that's happening with the daycare fraud and some of the other fraud going on in Columbus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Would you like me to get started?
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's all
Okay,
yours.
so we're probably going to break some news here tonight on the forum, so that's good news for folks. But there is progress in all this, okay? So let me say that Monday was a busy week as I filled in for Doyle and Jen down at WRFD. It's a drive time afternoon talk show host. And I had with me State Representative Josh Williams. And Josh, of course, gave his testimony on the bill that he introduced that will give the state auditor, the state attorney general, and the legislature more oversight when it comes to investigating and looking at the records of these different government agencies that are just shoving money out the door, okay? And once it goes out the door in application to these various entities, whether it be childcare, healthcare, transportation, Medicare, as you just heard, there hasn't been much oversight by the DeWine administration in regard to this, and they've actually been a self-policing authority. Well, that never works well, okay?
No, you
That's why
can't. You cannot police yourself. That's impossible.
that's why you
Doesn't
have
work.
audits and other eyes on the books, as it were, right? So let me start with this: the Ohio fraud story that just won't go away. The Somalian community, childcare, healthcare, transportation, and other government services fraud is a story that just won't go away. It is percolating under the surface, and it is a ticking time bomb. After the independent journalist reports on the Minneapolis massive fraud in the Somalian community of Greater Minneapolis by Nick Shirley, attention quickly turned to the second largest Somalian community in America, Columbus, Ohio. Quickly, independent investigative journalists began knocking on doors and doing search and of addresses where the money from state government was sent for the purposes of childcare, healthcare, and transportation services. The shocking reports revealed that these were empty offices. The child care facilities had few or no children coming or going, and yet these entities received hundreds of thousands of dollars and in some cases millions of dollars from state and federal government. This did not escape the attention of some state and officials who began doing their own investigations into the allegations and whistleblower reports. State Auditor Keith Faber and his staff are working to secure more records for review. State Attorney General Dave Yost stood in a press conference with State Representative Josh Williams supporting legislation that would grant more overseeing authority of these programs by the state legislature and state auditor's office. 42 House members, and I think one of them was just on your program, co-signed the legislation. That was Representative Gross co-signed this as well. So there's a report also this week out of Massachusetts. A Democratic state auditor is running into a firewall in her own state, and she's in a fight with members of her own party, the governor, the attorney general. They won't allow her to do proper audits. She has the same problem of massive fraud in the state of Massachusetts, and the people passed an overseeing auditing authority by 72% on the ballot, and yet they're stonewalling her. She said, he did this on Fox News, and this is a gal, she said, look, if they didn't have anything to hide, they wouldn't be doing this. Well, I say the same thing about state government. If the DeWine administration didn't have anything to hide with the Department of Children and Youth, they wouldn't be forestalling people asking for records. Let me explain. State Representative Josh Williams has been on this for a while, going back to last year. He has asked for the Department of Children and Youth, okay, which used to be Department of Job and Family Services. DeWine changed the name of it. And that's where this money for the child care services and the home health care and all that comes out of there, okay? So he's asked for specific records, and Kara Wendt, who is the director, and her staff and her legal team has withheld any records from coming out of that office to the state legislature. But it gets worse. It gets worse. The state auditor told me, Chris, they're not becoming forthcoming with records I'm requesting as state auditor. So
Okay, let's stop here a second. I want people for this to sink in with some people here, because this is big stuff. Okay, so you did a records request,
I
and
did.
they basically said go pound salt, and now you're saying the auditor for the state.
I can read it for you right here.
The auditor, okay, but I just want people to understand what we're talking about here. The auditor himself wanted some. He wanted some backup information, probably about the audits, or I don't know what. But anyhow, he was denied.
Yes,
He was denied information as well.
that's right.
This is crazy, and this is the website here. The Department of Children and Youth, and this is the one who runs it.
That's Kara Wendt. That's
Kara
the director
Wendt.
Yes. She serves at the pleasure of Governor DeWine. That's all, okay? I mean, none of us hired her. DeWine hired her, so she's doing whatever he wants her to do. But I've got a warning for these folks tonight, okay? Because the law is very clear. To hide a crime is a crime. And I would really alert public officials, you need to come forward with information if you have it. If you're working in these departments, you need to come forward and you need to present the information. Because right now, the state auditor said to me this week on the phone that I am getting more information, Chris, from whistleblowers than I am from the administration. Now, folks, these are all Republicans, just like in Massachusetts, where it's all Democrats. This isn't a left or right or Democrat or Republican issue. This is about your tax money. This is about our money being defrauded away by the Somalian community in the multiple millions of dollars that these people have basically pilfered from the public treasury. These are federal and state dollars. Now, the feds are investigating. Now, John Solomon of Just the News, he reported that a few weeks ago, and we're going to get to that report in just a minute, because that was really earth-shaking what he divulged, because the connection between Minneapolis and the massive fraud that's going on there has a direct contact to Columbus, Ohio, and the Somalian fraud that's going on here. Let me explain. John Solomon reported as federal agents, the Justice Department revealed to him that over the last few years, they have trafficked $136 million in cash, leaving John Glenn International Airport in Columbus out of the Somalian community to the Somalian community in Minneapolis. They packaged it up, what became $700 million, and they sent that over to Somalia. And the feds believe that Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group, is a recipient of a lot of those monies. Now, it sickens me as a Christian organization, yes, the Ohio Christian Alliance, that our tax dollars are ending up in the hands of a terrorist network that is actually killing Christians in Africa. Now, you say, well, that's a different terror group in Nigeria. You don't think they work in tandem and association at times? Of course they do. If you look it up in AI, though they may not be associated together, they've had training facilities together. Who's paying for those training facilities? Unfortunately, folks, it looks like we are. It looks like we are. The massive amounts of money that has made its way to Somalia by, again, child care services that they're not providing for children. Home health care, what's that? Well, that's like, if your mom was still at home and you didn't want to put her in a nursing home, and actually it saves the state and the federal government money if you care for mom. There is a program, home health care services, because it does take a lot of work to do that. And you can apply for that, and it's one of the government programs. The state auditor is going to make a major announcement, and I don't want to precipitate, get ahead of him, in other words, what he's about to announce in the next couple weeks. But he is going to announce.
Now, you said the state auditor, Keith Faber.
This is the auditor, Keith Faber. He's working behind the scenes. Believe me, he's frustrated, okay? And you can imagine how
taxpayers are frustrated. Hang on one second, Chris, because there's a lot of stuff for people to take in, and they're not familiar with it. I want to play this. I'm going to back up just a minute. This is about the daycare centers. You had Josh Williams. You interviewed him. This is a short segment right here.
The unfortunate part about the state of Ohio is our processes are intentionally turning a blind eye. When we go into a daycare center, we find irregularities in attendance recording sheets. Essentially, we're not flagging that for potential a fraud investigation like we should to the auditor's office. Instead, DCY is making an internal determination that they don't think it's fraud, and as long as they get their money reimbursed, they walk away and everyone wipes their hands clean. But our legislation that we've introduced actually calls for, one, DCY to be a mandatory reporter to the auditor's office. Two, it creates a lawful authority in the Attorney General to investigate daycare fraud, which they currently don't have that authority right now. And it provides a robust oversight to make sure that the kids that they are saying are present in the daycare centers are actually present on the days that they are billing the state of Ohio. I think this is reasonable oversight to prevent fraud in our daycare systems.
Okay, so what he was saying there, and I know you know what he is saying there because it was from your podcast or your radio show, but let me just kind of rephrase it here so that I can understand it and everybody else can understand it. So that was Josh Williams.
Yes.
He's a state rep out of the Toledo area. And it sounds like, and you had said this earlier when you first came on, but doesn't hurt repeating. It sounds like that department polices itself.
That's
the
right.
Department of Children and Youth. They decide if there's fraud. And if they say there's no fraud because the auditor cannot act unless the DCY says that there's a fraud case, correct?
Well, first of all, the auditor, what he is doing, he can audit government agencies. So he can audit the Department of Children and Youth. But what he audits is the audit that they themselves have conducted, okay? So the forms that they filled out, that's what he's able to review. But he's also able to go a little further and do some investigation. That's what he's doing. And he's found out some things on his own and with whistleblowers, because when those whistleblowers come to him, then he can pursue that. What he can't do is on-site inspections of an individual business, a private business. He can only audit government agencies. That's the extent of his authority. In other words, DCY needs to take their people to the street. So let's say that there's a complaint that there's a child care center reporting that they have 100 children when only maybe 20 show up, but they're charging the state of Ohio for 100, not 20, okay? They're charging them for the full 100. That's a violation right then. You get stripped of your license, you get shut down, and actually you could be referred for criminal investigation and criminal charges. Here's the problem. Kara Wendt, I'm glad you got her on the screen again. She has not referred any of these cases, even the ones that DeWine said that we found, and we withdrew their license, and we stopped giving them payments. None of those were referred for criminal prosecution. So the Attorney General can't do anything because that hasn't been referred for from the governor's office and from the Department of Children and Youth for a prosecution procedure. Now, that's why the new legislation is key, because what State Representative Josh Williams is saying, we don't want that department to be the signal man as to the end-all voice of what happens in these cases. We want to be able to determine whether something should be pursued of criminal charges. So hooray for him, and it's great legislation. I don't have the bill number in front of me. It just received a sponsor hearing this week. We'll send that out and put it on our website at Ohio Christian Alliance. But let's go back a minute to...
One second. Can I stop you?
Wait. I don't want to lose this thought.
Okay, go ahead.
Back at the beginning of the year, when this happened, DeWine did 5 days of press conferences. When this story was breaking right at the end of the year and into the first few days of January, he did like 5 press conferences a day. Through that next period. And he said, we've done 10,000 audits through this group. Here to find out, those audits, so-called, they were over several years. And they're health and wellness checks. Not whether they were actually, not attendance checks, not whether there was anybody there, it was an operation that was actually working. It was just health and wealth and safety. And I'm like, this is what Josh Williams tells me, right? So let me read this to you. So we made a request for the 10,000 audits that they said that they conducted. We requested for the year 2024 and 2025. This is from their legal department that came to us just last week, to the Ohio Christian Alliance. Mr. Long, this email is in response to the inquiry you sent to DCY information mailbox. In your request, you asked for on-site audits for the years 2025 and 2024. DCY is denying your request as overly broad and ambiguous. The department does not maintain records labeled as such, and your request does not provide enough specificity that DCY can reasonably identify what public records are being requested, and the letter goes on. But then to find out that State Representative Josh Williams, members of the legislature are being stonewalled by this agency. The state auditor is being stonewalled by this agency.
Wow.
Believe me, they knew what I was asking for, and this is their denial. That's right. That's the lady right there. By the way, I asked to have her email so I could send her a message. I asked to speak to her, and the staff were so rude to me and said, no, you're not getting her email. We cannot connect you. You go to the website and you fill in the fillable form and you use the general email. They were so rude to me. I told them who I was, Chris Long, the Ohio Christian Alliance. We've been around 25 years as a public policy organization. We're licensed lobbyists at the state house. And don't think of anything, folks. We don't make any money. We're broke, but you have to be licensed to be a lobbyist, what you do. But the fact is, and I want to answer one of the questions that came up in the chat. There's a gentleman there that asked that what it said every $10,000 has to be reported to by the bank. How are they moving this cash through the airport? It's a great question. The fact is they are. And the Biden administration, so federal authorities saw this cash in the suitcases. They waved it on. They waved it through. And so they knew it was going to Somalia. They knew it was the Somalian community. DeWine knows that there's massive fraud in the Somalian community. He's trying to wait out the clock so he gets out of office. This is his last year. So this falls in somebody else's watch. Now, where the concern is here is the Trump administration, the FBI under Kash Patel, they're investigating in Minneapolis. We don't know how much they're doing in the red state of Ohio. Is there kind of some political intrigue here that they don't want to make a big mess with Republicans in control of this situation and blows up? But quite honestly, all of us were not aware because these are people that make application for these services. The money was sent out. And the problem is government does not do a check, a follow-up to make sure that those services are being rendered. That's where the Department of Children and Youth, that's where they're culpable. We're just simply asking them, did you make those follow-up visits? Did you determine that these people are actually providing the services that they say that they're doing? Have you done that? They don't want to provide us, the state auditor, the legislature, or entities like ours, and I'm sure there's others that are asking for it. They're not giving us any information. That tells you they're hiding the truth. They didn't do very many audits or on-site visits. I mean, look, you had Jack, what's his name, the investigative reporter out of Columbus. You had
Jack Windsor.
Jack Windsor was down there. I spoke to him last week, by the way. I'm going to be on Jack's program. Jack has done some investigative reporting, actually with John Rocker. They were going out there. Mahet Cook, you had Walter Kurt, you had others that are on the ground, some non-named, and doing research in the greater Somalian community of Greater Columbus. They're finding out all kinds of nefarious things. They're seeing where several entities are in one building where millions of dollars are dispersed from government agencies, and there's nobody there to even answer a phone. You got other where the addresses are false. Now, according to the Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, he said, listen, if that address is wrong and they're reporting that address, that's a violation. So there's going to be, listen, this is not going to go away because there are whistleblowers. There's people like us. We're going to keep it going. Jack Windsor is on top of this. Walter Kurt, this guy's like dedicating his life to it. You should have him on your program sometime.
Yeah, we got to get him on. Hey, listen, Chris, I want to get some other people here discussing this, ask you questions.